Nobody believed Grandmother Ashanti when she said the twins would destroy each other. Zalika and Amara arrived on the same night the sky cracked open with lightning, their cries harmonizing like temple bells. The village of Nefertari celebrated for 7 days. Twins were sacred, a double blessing from the gods. But Grandmother Ashanti, the oldest woman in the village and keeper of ancient secrets, stood at the edge of the celebration with tears streaming down her weathered face. "One will shine like the morning star," she whispered to their mother, Ife, as she held the newborns. "The other will become the darkness that swallows it." Ife dismissed the words as the ramblings of old age. How could anyone look at these perfect identical faces and see destruction? Both girls had the same copper-brown skin, the same wide eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of their ancestors, the same tiny fingers that gripped with surprising strength. They were mirror images, perfect halves of a divine whole. But Grandmother Ashanti knew what others couldn't see. She had lived through 87 harvests, had witnessed the rise and fall of 3 chiefs, and possessed the gift of reading the patterns in nature that spoke of things to come. The night the twins were born, she had seen 2 moons reflected in the sacred well, one bright and clear, the other rippling and distorted, as if something beneath the water was trying to pull it down into darkness. The twins grew inseparable through childhood. Where Zalika went, Amara followed like a shadow. They learned to pound cassava together, their pestles rising and falling in perfect rhythm. They fetched water from the village well at dawn, their laughter echoing through the quiet streets. They plaited each other's hair in intricate patterns that took hours to complete, whispering secrets and dreams while their fingers worked. Zalika was the elder by mere minutes, but those minutes seemed to carry weight. She walked with her shoulders back, spoke with gentle authority, and had a way of making people feel seen and heard. When disputes arose between neighbors, they sought Zalika's counsel. When children cried, they ran to Zalika's arms. She possessed an inner light that drew people like moths to flame. Amara was quieter, more observant. She watched how people smiled at Zalika, how they leaned in when she spoke, how the chief's son, Kofi, would find excuses to walk past their compound just to catch a glimpse of her sister. Amara told herself it didn't matter. They were twins, what belonged to one belonged to both. That's what their mother always said. But mothers don't always understand the mathematics of the heart. The first crack appeared during the harvest festival of their 16th year. The village of Nefertari hosted a competition among the young women, a test of skill in pottery, weaving, and cooking. The winner would receive a golden anklet blessed by the priests and the honor of leading the next planting ceremony. Zalika and Amara entered together, promising to share whatever outcome arrived. For 3 days, they worked side by side. Zalika's pottery was smooth and symmetrical, her weaving tight and colorful, her jollof rice perfectly seasoned with just enough heat to make the elders nod in approval. Amara's work was equally skilled. Her pottery bore intricate designs. Her weaving incorporated rare patterns passed down from Grandmother Ashanti. Her cooking carried the bold flavors their father loved. When the chief's wife announced the winner, the entire village had gathered in the central square. The sun hung low in the sky, painting everything in shades of amber and gold. Zalika, daughter of Ife, stepped forward. The cheering erupted like thunder. People rushed to congratulate Zalika, touching the golden anklet now fastened around her ankle, praising her skill and grace. In the chaos of celebration, nobody noticed Amara slip away into the lengthening shadows. Nobody except Grandmother Ashanti. The old woman found Amara by the sacred well, staring at her reflection in the dark water. The well was ancient, built by their ancestors when the village was first founded, and it was said that the water could show you truths if you looked long enough. "Child," Grandmother Ashanti said softly, lowering herself onto the stone edge beside Amara. "What do you see?" Amara's voice came out strangled, barely above a whisper. "I see someone who will always be second. Someone who lives in a shadow, even when the sun is directly overhead." "That is not what the water shows," the old woman said, peering into the depths. "That is what your heart tells you. There is a difference." "Is there?" Amara turned to face her grandmother, and for the first time, Grandmother Ashanti saw something cold flickering behind the girl's eyes. We are identical in every way, yet she gets the smiles, the praise, the golden anklet. We do the same work, yet she receives the glory. Tell me, Grandmother, what makes her more worthy than me? Grandmother Ashanti reached for Amara's hand, but the girl pulled away. Worthiness is not measured in anklets or applause, the old woman said carefully. Zalika has a gift for bringing peace to troubled hearts. That is her purpose. You, child, have gifts of your own, gifts you haven't yet discovered because you spend too much time comparing your path to hers. But Amara was no longer listening. She stared into the well, and this time, Grandmother Ashanti saw what the girl saw, 2 moons reflected in the water, one brilliant and whole, the other fractured and dim. I am tired of being the lesser moon, Amara whispered. Those words would echo through Grandmother Ashanti's mind for weeks to come, long after the harvest festival ended, long after Zalika's golden anklet became a permanent fixture that caught the light whenever she walked. The old woman tried to speak with Ife about her concerns, but Zalika and Amara's mother was too busy preparing for the upcoming wedding season and managing the household. They're twins, Ife said dismissively, grinding millet for the evening meal. They love each other. Amara is just disappointed. She'll move past it. But some disappointments don't fade. They ferment. As the weeks turned into months, Amara became increasingly withdrawn. She still worked alongside Zalika, still smiled when required, still performed her duties with precision. But Grandmother Ashanti noticed the way Amara's jaw tightened when people praised Zalika. She saw how the girl's hands would clench into fists when Kofi, the chief's son, would bring Zalika wildflowers from the riverbank. And she noticed something else, something that made her old bones ache with dread. Amara had started spending time with Grandmother Ya, a woman who lived on the outskirts of the village. Grandmother Ya was known for 2 things, her knowledge of herbs and her willingness to help people solve problems that required unconventional solutions. People visited her in darkness, paid her in silence, and never spoke of what transactions occurred in her hut. Grandmother Ashanti tried to warn Amara. She tried to warn Ife. She even tried to warn Zalika. But some prophecies must fulfill themselves before anyone will believe they were real. The night everything changed began like any other. The moon hung full and heavy in the sky, and the village well shimmered with its reflection. But this time, instead of 2 moons, there was only one. The other had already descended into darkness. Grandmother Ya's hut smelled of burning sage and secrets. Amara had visited 3 times before finally gathering the courage to ask for what she truly wanted. The first 2 visits had been innocent enough, a remedy for her mother's persistent headaches, a poultice for her father's aching joints. But tonight, as she ducked through the low doorway into the dimly lit space, she carried a different kind of pain, the kind that no herb could cure. Sit, child, Grandmother Ya said without turning around. She was hunched over a mortar, grinding something that released a bitter, acrid smell into the air. I wondered how long it would take you to come back. The old woman's voice was like dried leaves scraping against stone. She was ageless in the way that frightened people. No one could remember her being young, and no one could imagine her dying. Some said she had walked with the ancient pharaohs. Others whispered she had made deals with spirits that kept death at bay. Amara sat on the woven mat, her heart hammering against her ribs. In the flickering light of the oil lamp, shadows danced across walls covered with dried plants, animal bones, and symbols that made her skin prickle with unease. I need your help, Amara said, her voice barely steady. You need more than help, child. You need transformation. Grandmother Ya finally turned, her eyes gleaming like a cat's in the darkness. You want to stop being invisible. You want them to see you the way they see her. Amara's breath caught. How did you? I see many things. The twins of Nefertari are known to all. Zalika, the golden one, beloved by the village. And Amara? She let the name hang in the air like smoke. The shadow who wishes to become the light. Shame and anger warred in Amara's chest. I'm not asking to hurt her. I want what's fair. I want equal recognition. Equal love. Fairness. Grandmother Ya laughed, a sound like cracking bones. The gods do not deal in fairness, child. They deal in purpose. Some are born to shine. Others are born to make the shining ones look brighter by comparison. The words landed like physical blows. Amara stood to leave, but Grandmother Ya's next words stopped her cold. Unless you're willing to change your stars. Amara turned slowly. What do you mean? Grandmother Ya beckoned her closer, and against every instinct screaming for her to run, Amara obeyed. The old woman pulled out a small clay vial, no larger than a thumb, filled with dark liquid that seemed to absorb the lamplight. This is water from the river of forgetting, blessed under the dark moon and mixed with the tears of the envious dead. 3 drops in the village well at midnight, spoken with the words I'll teach you, and within 7 days, the scales will balance. What will it do? Amara whispered, unable to look away from the vial. It will not harm your sister, not physically, but it will adjust how people perceive her. The charm that makes her so magnetic will fade. Her light will dim just enough for yours to be seen. Think of it as evening out what nature made unequal. Amara's hands trembled as she reached for the vial, then pulled back. This is witchcraft. Dark magic. This is justice. Grandmother Ya corrected. You have the same face, the same blood, the same abilities. Why should she receive all the blessings while you receive all the watching? The gods made a mistake when they distributed their gifts. This merely corrects it. What do you want in return? The golden anklet. When Zalika's favor fades, when the chief's wife regrets her choice and offers the honor to you instead, you'll receive the anklet. Bring it to me. That's all. It seemed too simple. Too easy. Amara stared at the vial, thinking of all the times she'd stood in Zalika's shadow. All the times Kofi had smiled at her sister while barely noticing she existed. All the times her own mother had said, "Be more like Zalika," without realizing how those words carved into her soul. The words. Amara heard herself ask. Grandmother Ya smiled, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too numerous. She leaned close and whispered phrases in a language older than the village, older than the pyramids, older than memory itself. Amara repeated them until they were burned into her mind. Midnight, child. When both moons are reflected in the well. 3 drops. Speak the words. And do not tell a living soul, or the magic will reverse itself 3-fold upon you. Amara took the vial, tucking it into the folds of her wrapper. It felt warm against her skin, pulsing like a second heartbeat. She should have asked more questions. She should have wondered why Grandmother Ya wanted the anklet so badly. She should have noticed the way the shadows in the hut seemed to writhe with anticipation, as if they were hungry for what was to come. But envy is a poison that clouds judgment, and Amara's judgment had been clouded for a very long time. That night, she lay on her sleeping mat next to Zalika, listening to her sister's peaceful breathing. Zalika had talked for an hour about Kofi before sleep, how he had asked her to walk with him after the next market day, how his mother had sent Ife a gift of fine cloth, how happy she was. Can you imagine Amara? Zalika had whispered in the darkness. Me, married to the chief's son? Our family would be elevated. You would be sister to royalty. We could ensure good marriages for our younger cousins. Everything would change for all of us. Everything would change for Zalika, Amara had thought bitterly. I would still be just the twin, just the sister, just the shadow. Now, as midnight approached, Amara rose silently. She'd prepared her excuse. If anyone asked, she would say she needed to relieve herself. But the compound was silent. Even the dogs slept. The village well stood in the central square, surrounded by packed earth and memories. How many times had she and Zalika drawn water here together, laughing and racing to see who could pull the bucket faster? The well had witnessed their entire lives, had reflected their faces 1,000 times. Tonight, it would witness betrayal. Amara looked up at the sky. 2 moons, one the true moon, bright and perfect, the other a reflection in the well's dark surface. just as Grandmother Ashani had seen the night they were born. Her hands shook as she uncorked the vial. The liquid inside seemed to move with a life of its own, swirling with colors that shouldn't exist, deep purple bleeding into black, shot through with veins of sickly green. 3 drops. That's all. The first drop fell and disappeared into the well, without a sound. Amara felt her heartbeat in her throat. The second drop followed, and this time, she thought she heard something, a whisper, or perhaps a sigh, rising from the water's depths. The third drop hung on the lip of the vial. This was her last chance to stop, to throw the vial away, to run back to her sleeping mat and forget this madness. But then she thought of Kofi's smile, meant only for Zalika, of the golden anklet, of her mother's unconscious favoritism, of a lifetime of being the lesser twin. The third drop fell. Amara spoke the words Grandmother Ya had taught her, each syllable scraping against her tongue like broken glass. The language was ancient and wrong, and speaking it felt like inviting something dark to wrap itself around her soul. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the well water began to glow with a faint, sickly light. The reflection of the moon twisted and distorted, as if something beneath the surface was pulling at it, dragging it down into depths that had nothing to do with water and everything to do with old, hungry magic. Amara stumbled backward, suddenly terrified of what she'd done. But it was too late. The light faded, the water settled, and the night returned to normal, except it wasn't normal anymore. She had changed something fundamental, had shifted the balance of forces she didn't understand. She ran back to the compound, climbed onto her mat, and lay there trembling until dawn. Beside her, Zalika slept peacefully, unaware that her twin had just poisoned the village well with envy disguised as justice. Unaware that within 7 days, everything she knew would crumble to dust. And unaware that the real price of Amara's bargain was far higher than a golden anklet could ever repay. The sickness started small, like all great catastrophes do. On the first day after Amara poisoned the well, old Kwame the blacksmith complained of headaches. By afternoon, his wife reported the same. By evening, 12 people had visited the healer with identical symptoms, pounding heads, bitter taste in their mouths, and an unusual irritability that made neighbors snap at each other over trivial matters. It must be something in the air, Aoife said, brewing ginger tea for affected families. The dry season always brings ailments. But Amara knew better. She watched from the shadows as people drew water from the well, each bucket carrying traces of the dark magic she'd unleashed. Guilt gnawed at her insides like a living thing, but she pushed it down, reminding herself why she'd done it. This was temporary. In 7 days, when Zalika's unnatural charm faded and Amara finally received the recognition she deserved, everything would return to normal. Except nothing returned to normal. On the second day, children began having nightmares. They woke screaming about shadows with teeth, about drowning in dark water, about a woman with eyes like a serpent who whispered their names. Parents comforted them, attributing the terrors to childish imagination, but Grandmother Ashanti knew better. She appeared at Amara's compound that afternoon, her ancient eyes boring into the girl's soul. "What have you done?" the old woman asked quietly, catching Amara alone while Zalika was at the market with their mother. "I don't know what you mean," Amara stammered, but her trembling hands betrayed her. "The well water has been corrupted. I can taste it, not with my tongue, but with the senses the gods gave me to protect this village. Dark magic swims in every drop we drink. Magic spoken in the old language, the forbidden tongue." Grandmother Ashanti gripped Amara's shoulders with surprising strength. "If you've made a bargain with Grandmother Ya, you must break it now, before the price comes due." I haven't. But the lies dissolved on Amara's tongue under her grandmother's knowing gaze. "Oh, child," Grandmother Ashanti whispered, and the disappointment in those 2 words cut deeper than any blade. "You've invited something into our village that feeds on jealousy and grows fat on betrayal. Whatever she promised you is a lie. Grandmother Ya serves only herself and the ancient spirits who keep her alive. They demand payment and they always collect." "She said it would just balance things," Amara said desperately. That Zalika's charm would fade so mine could be seen. That's all. No one would be hurt. And you believed her? Grandmother Ashanti released her, shaking her head. Magic demands balance, yes, but not the kind you imagine. If Zalika's light dims, something must fill that space. Nature abhors a vacuum, child. You may have extinguished a candle, but you've opened the door for darkness to rush in. Before Amara could respond, screaming erupted from the direction of the well. They ran together, joining the crowd gathering in the village square. People pointed at the well with expressions of horror and disbelief. The water, usually clear and cool, had turned black as ink. Thick and viscous, it bubbled up from the depths, releasing a stench of decay that made people gag and cover their faces. "Cursed," someone shouted. "The well is cursed." The chief arrived, his face grave. Kofi stood beside him, and for the first time, Amara saw fear in the young man's eyes. The well was the village's lifeline. Without it, Nefertari would die. "We must purify it," the chief announced. "Call the priests. Prepare offerings. We'll hold a cleansing ceremony at sunset." But Grandmother Ashanti stepped forward, her voice carrying authority that even the chief respected. "This is not a natural corruption. Someone has poisoned the well with dark magic. Until we find the source and make it right, no ceremony will cleanse it." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. People looked at each other with suspicion, trust evaporating like morning dew. Who among them would do such a thing? Amara felt the vial hidden in her wrapper, burning against her skin like a brand. She wanted to confess, to throw herself at Grandmother Ashanti's feet and beg for help, but fear paralyzed her tongue. What would happen if they knew? Would they exile her? Execute her? Would Zalika ever forgive her? Zalika. Where was Zalika? Amara searched the crowd frantically and finally spotted her sister near the edge, talking with Kofi. Even in the midst of crisis, he had sought her out. Even now, with the village well literally bubbling with dark magic, Zalika's magnetic charm drew people to her like iron to lodestone. The familiar resentment flared in Amara's chest, burning away the guilt. This was exactly why she'd done it. This constant, gnawing feeling of invisibility, while her twin shone like the sun. Perhaps the well turning black was a small price to pay for finally being seen. But that night, the price began to reveal itself. Amara woke to find her sleeping mat soaked with sweat. Her body felt heavy, wrong, as if her bones had been replaced with lead. When she tried to sit up, the room spun violently. "Amara?" Zalika's voice came from beside her, thick with sleep. "Are you all right?" "I don't feel well," Amara managed, and it was the first honest thing she'd said in days. Zalika pressed a cool hand to her sister's forehead. "You're burning up." "Mother! Mother, come quickly." Ife rushed in, followed by their father. They carried Amara to a fresh mat, brought wet cloths to cool her fever, brewed bitter medicines that she could barely swallow. But nothing helped. The fever climbed higher, and with it came visions. She saw Grandmother Ya's hut, but it was no longer a simple dwelling. It was a gateway, a tear in the fabric of the world, and through it poured shadows with hungry eyes. She saw the village well, except at the bottom wasn't water but a pit that went down forever, and at the very depths, something ancient and terrible was climbing up, drawn by the magic she'd spoken. She saw herself and Zalika as children, laughing by the well, their reflections perfect mirror images. Then she watched as one reflection, her own, began to crack and fracture, dark liquid seeping through the breaks, until what looked back at her wasn't her face anymore but something monstrous, wearing her skin. The debt must be paid, a voice whispered in her fever dream. It sounded like Grandmother Ya, but also like the hissing of serpents, the rustling of dried bones, the whispers of 1,000 envious dead. "You took from the well. Now the well takes from you." Amara woke screaming. Zalika was there immediately, holding her, stroking her hair, whispering soothing words. "It's all right, sister. I'm here. You're safe. I won't let anything harm you." The tenderness in Zalika's voice made Amara want to weep. Even now, even as Amara's dark bargain poisoned the village, Zalika loved her completely. The golden anklet at Zalika's ankle caught the lamplight, and Amara felt another wave of bitter envy, followed immediately by crushing guilt. What had she done? Over the next 2 days, Amara's condition worsened. Her skin took on a grayish pallor, her eyes sank into her skull, and she could barely keep down water. The village healer declared himself baffled. He'd never seen an illness progress so rapidly or resist treatment so completely. It's as if something is eating her from the inside, he confessed to Aoife and her husband. Not disease. Something else. Grandmother Ashanti visited on the 3rd day. She sat beside Amara's mat and spoke in a low voice while Zalika and Aoife prepared more medicine in the next room. The magic is consuming you, child. That's the price grandmother, didn't mention. The darkness you invited into the well isn't just poisoning the water, it's poisoning you. You are the vessel through which it entered this world, and now it's feeding on your life force to grow stronger. Make it stop, Amara pleaded, tears streaming down her wasted face. Please, grandmother.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Make it stop. There's only one way, Grandmother Ashanti said gravely. You must confess what you've done, publicly, before the entire village. You must break the bargain with Grandmother and accept whatever punishment the village deems fit. Only complete honesty can cleanse dark magic born from deception. They'll hate me. Zalika will hate me. Perhaps. But at least you'll be alive to earn back their trust. Continue on this path, and in 4 more days, the magic will consume you entirely. You'll die, Amara, and something else, something that wears your face but isn't you, will rise from your corpse. Is that the price you're willing to pay for avoiding shame? Amara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her choices crushing her chest. For more days until Zalika's charm was supposed to fade. For more days until Amara would finally be seen. Or 4 more days until she ceased to exist entirely. The decision should have been simple. But as Zalika returned with medicine, her face tight with worry, as she sat beside Amara and held her hand with such genuine love, Amara felt something harder than fear or shame. She felt the bitter determination of someone who had already fallen too far to climb back up. Perhaps confession was the right path. Perhaps honesty would save her. But there was another option, whispered in the dark corners of her fevered mind. Perhaps if Zalika fell first, the magic would have no reason to consume Amara. Perhaps the true solution was to finish what she'd started, to ensure her sister's light went out completely, once and for all. In her delirium, these thoughts made perfect, terrible sense. And somewhere on the edge of the village, in a hut that smelled of sage and secrets, Grandmother smiled, knowing her trap had been set perfectly. The serpent had tasted envy, and now it would feast on betrayal. On the 4th day, Zalika fell ill. It started with the same symptoms Amara had shown: headache, fever, bitter taste. But unlike Amara, whose condition had deteriorated rapidly, Zalika remained functional, insisting on caring for her twin despite her own growing weakness. We're connected, Zalika said, her voice hoarse as she spooned broth into Amara's mouth. If you're sick, how can I be well? We came into this world together. Whatever afflicts you, afflicts me. The words struck Amara like hammer blows. She watched through half-lidded eyes as Zalika, despite her own trembling hands and sweat-slicked brow, tended to her with unwavering devotion. The golden anklet clinked softly with each movement, a constant reminder of everything Amara had resented. That night, Amara's fever broke enough for clarity to return. She lay in the darkness, listening to Zalika's labored breathing beside her, and finally understood the full horror of what she'd done. The magic wasn't consuming her because she'd poisoned the well. It was consuming her because she'd poisoned herself, with envy, resentment, and the willingness to destroy what she should have cherished most. The darkness in the well was merely a reflection of the darkness she'd allowed to grow in her own heart. And now that darkness was spreading to Zalika. Before dawn, Amara made her decision. She rose on shaking legs, each step in agony, and made her way through the quiet compound. She needed to confess, needed to make this right, but first she needed to confront the one who had set this trap. Grandmother Ya's hut sat in darkness, but the door opened before Amara could knock, as if she'd been expected. "Come to complete the bargain?" Grandmother Ya asked, her eyes gleaming. "Your sister's charm is fading nicely. Another 3 days, and the anklet will be yours." "What have you done to us?" Amara demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. "The magic is killing me, and now it's spreading to Zalika." "Not quite killing you, child. Transforming you. When the 7 days are complete, you'll emerge stronger, harder, able to take what you want without guilt or hesitation. Your sister's essence will be yours, her charm, her light, everything that made people love her. You'll finally be the twin who matters." By destroying her, Amara felt bile rise in her throat. By becoming a monster? By becoming powerful, Grandmother Ya corrected. "The world has no place for the weak, for those who live in shadows. I'm offering you the sun. I don't want it. Not like this. Tell me how to reverse it." Grandmother Ya's expression hardened. "There is no reversal. The magic is ancient, bound by laws older than the gods. Once spoken, the words cannot be unspoken. The well must have its offering." "Then take me," Amara said desperately. "Let me be the offering. Spare Zalika. Spare the village. This is my fault. I'll pay the price." "How noble," the old woman sneered. "But the magic doesn't work that way. It needs both of you, the light and the shadow, the beloved and the envious. When Zalika's light is fully extinguished, the transformation will complete. You'll absorb what she was, and the village will have a new golden child to worship. They'll never know the difference." "They'll know," Amara said, backing toward the door. "And even if they don't, I'll know. I'll carry the weight of what I've done every moment of every day. That's not power. That's prison." She stumbled out into the pre-dawn darkness, Grandmother Ya's laughter following her like smoke. By the time the sun rose, Amara had made her way to the village well. A crowd was already gathering. The water had turned from black to a deep crimson, and the stench had become unbearable. The chief stood with his council, debating whether to fill the well and dig a new one, but Grandmother Ashani shook her head. "The corruption will follow," she said. "We cannot outrun what we've invited in. We must face it." Amara pushed through the crowd, her wasted body drawing shocked stares. She should have been in bed, should have been barely conscious, but desperation gave her strength. "I know what poisoned the well," she announced, her voice carrying across the square. "I know because I did it." Silence fell like a physical weight. Every eye turned to her. Somewhere in the crowd, Aoife gasped. Zalika, who had insisted on coming despite her fever, stared at her twin with incomprehension. 5 days ago, I went to Grandmother Ya and bought dark magic. I poisoned the well because..." Amara's voice cracked, but she forced herself to continue. "Because I was jealous of my sister. Because I wanted what she had, the love, the recognition, the golden anklet. I wanted to dim her light, so mine could finally be seen." "Amara, no," Zalika whispered, but Amara couldn't look at her. If she saw the betrayal in her twin's eyes, she would lose her courage. "The magic is corrupting the well, and it's consuming me. Now it's spreading to Zalika because we're connected, because we share the same blood. Grandmother Ya says there's no reversal, that the magic must complete its course. But I'm here to offer myself as payment. Take my life. Spare my sister and the village. Please." Grandmother Ashanti stepped forward, her ancient face unreadable. "Confession is the first step, child. But the magic demands more than words." "Then tell me what to do. I'll do anything." The old woman gazed at her for a long moment, then looked at Zalika, who had pushed through the crowd to stand beside her twin. Despite her fever, despite the revelation of Amara's betrayal, Zalika took her sister's hand. "We do it together," Zalika said firmly. "Whatever needs to be done." "Zalika, you don't understand," Amara sobbed. "I tried to destroy you. I poisoned the well to steal your life. Why would you? How can you?" "Because you're my sister," Zalika said simply. Because we came into this world together, and if we're going to leave it, we'll do that together too. Because I love you, Amara, even when you can't love yourself. The words broke something in Amara. Not the fever, not the magic, but the hard shell of resentment she'd built around her heart. She collapsed against Zalika, and they held each other while the village watched. Grandmother Ashanti nodded slowly. There is a way, but it requires sacrifice from both of you. The magic feeds on division, on the space between light and shadow. But if you can close that space, if you can become truly one again, the magic will have nothing to feed on. How? They asked in unison. The well shows truth to those brave enough to look. You must descend into it together, face what waits at the bottom, and choose each other over everything else. The magic has created a spirit, a manifestation of Amara's envy and Zalika's unknowing pride. You must defeat it not with strength, but with unity. The chief began to protest, saying it was madness to send two sick girls into a corrupted well, but Grandmother Ashanti silenced him with a look. This is not the chief's decision, not the council's, not even mine. This is a battle between sisters, between light and shadow, between love and envy. They must fight it themselves. Amara looked at Zalika, expecting to see fear or hatred, but saw only determination. Together, Zalika said, squeezing her hand. Together, Amara echoed. They approached the well. The crimson water bubbled and churned, releasing vapors that stung the eyes and burned the lungs. Grandmother Ashanti gave them each a rope tied around their waists, the other end secured to the strongest men in the village. Remember, she said, the magic will show you your worst fears, your deepest wounds. It will try to divide you, but you must hold on to each other, no matter what you see. Promise me. We promise, they said together. And then they descended into darkness. The well was impossibly deep, far deeper than any natural well should be. As they climbed down the slick stones, the light from above faded until they were surrounded by blackness, so complete it felt alive. The water below them glowed with a sickly phosphorescence, and shapes moved beneath the surface, shapes with too many limbs, too many teeth. I'm sorry, Amara whispered as they climbed. Zalika, I'm so sorry. You've been nothing but kind to me, and I repaid you with poison. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Stop, Zalika said, her voice echoing strangely in the confined space. I'm not blameless in this. I knew you felt overshadowed. I saw it in your eyes every time someone praised me, every time Kofi smiled at me. But I was so wrapped up in enjoying the attention that I never thought to share it, to make sure you felt equally valued. I let you live in my shadow because it felt good to be the sun. The confession struck Amara as powerfully as her own. They weren't just light and shadow, beloved and envious. They were two imperfect people who had failed each other in different ways. Look, Zalika breathed. They had reached the bottom of the well. But instead of water, they stood on solid ground, a cavern that shouldn't exist, lit by the eerie glow of the crimson liquid pooling at the edges. And in the center stood a figure. It had Amara's face, but twisted with malice. It wore robes woven from shadows and held a staff topped with a serpent skull. This was the spirit Grandmother Ashanti had warned them about, the manifestation of Amara's darkest feelings given form. Welcome, sisters, it said in Amara's voice, though distorted and cruel. I am everything she tried to hide. The jealousy, the rage, the bitter resentment. I am the truth of her heart. No, Amara said, stepping in front of Zalika. You're a piece of my heart, not the whole thing. The spirit laughed. A piece? I am the foundation on which everything else was built. Every smile she gave you, Zalika, was hiding this. Every word of love was laced with poison. She hates you. She's always hated you. That's not true, Amara protested, but her voice wavered. Isn't it? The spirit moved closer, its movements serpentine and wrong. Remember the harvest festival? You wanted to rip that anklet from her leg. Remember when Kofi brought her flowers? You fantasized about telling him everything ugly about her, every secret weakness. Remember when Mother said, "Be more like Zalika"? You wished Zalika would disappear, would die, so you could finally take her place. Each word was a blade, cutting deep because they held kernels of truth. Amara felt Zalika's hand slip from hers, felt the space between them growing. "I did think those things," Amara admitted, tears streaming down her face. "In my worst moments, I thought them. But that's not all I am. I also loved her. I also celebrated her victories. I also wanted her to be happy, even when it hurt. Love and hate. The spirit purred. Light and shadow. You can't have both. Choose." "I choose both," Amara said firmly. She turned to Zalika, who stood frozen, her face pale. "I choose to acknowledge that I've felt jealousy and love, resentment and admiration, hate and devotion. Because that's what it means to be human. We contain multitudes. We're not just one thing." She reached for Zalika's hand again. "I'm sorry for the darkness I let grow in my heart. But I'm not sorry for loving you, even when that love came tangled with envy. You're my sister, my twin, my other half. And I choose you over this darkness. I choose you over everything." Zalika's eyes filled with tears. She grabbed Amara's hand and pulled her close. "I choose you too. All of you. The jealousy, the pain, the imperfect love. Because none of us are perfect. None of us are just light or just shadow. We're both, always." The spirit shrieked, a sound that shook the cavern. "You can't defeat me with platitudes. I am real. I am powerful." "You're real," Zalika agreed, facing the creature. "But you're not more powerful than the love between sisters. You're not more powerful than forgiveness. You're not more powerful than two people who choose each other despite their flaws." The twins joined hands and stepped forward together. The spirit raised its staff, and the cavern filled with visions, every moment of jealousy, every flash of resentment, every dark thought Amara had ever harbored. But alongside them appeared other visions, two small girls plaiting each other's hair, laughing over a shared joke, defending each other from bullies, staying up late to comfort each other during storms. Light and shadow, woven together into a complete picture. "We see you," Amara said to the spirit. "We acknowledge you, but we don't give you power over us anymore." "I am part of the story," Zalika added, "but I'm not the whole story." Together, they reached out and touched the spirit. Instead of fighting it, they absorbed it, accepting it as a piece of Amara's truth that needed to be integrated, not destroyed. The darkness flowed into them, and for a moment, Amara thought they would be consumed. But then Zalika's hand tightened on hers, and she felt her sister's light flowing into her as well. Not replacing the darkness, but balancing it. Creating a whole person who could acknowledge both the ugly and the beautiful parts of herself. The cavern shattered like glass. They found themselves at the bottom of the well, in normal water, with worried faces peering down from above. The men hauled them up quickly, and they emerged to cheering from the crowd. The well water was clear again, pure and clean. But more importantly, the fever had broken. Both sisters were weak, but healing. Grandmother Ashani helped them to sit on the stone edge of the well. "You did it. You faced the darkness and chose each other. The magic is broken." "What about grandmother, yeah?" Amara asked. "What about the bargain? When you integrated the spirit instead of destroying it, when you chose wholeness over division, you broke the power she held over you. Dark magic requires division to survive. You've made yourselves whole." Later that evening, as they recovered in their compound, Zalika removed the golden anklet from her ankle. She held it up, watching it catch the lamplight. "This caused so much pain," she said quietly. "I think I should return it to the chief's wife. Tell her neither of us wants it." "No," Amara said, surprising herself. "Keep it. You earned it fairly. And I need to learn to be happy for your successes without comparing them to my own worth. That's my work to do, not yours." Zalika smiled and reached for her sister's hand. "Then let's share it. You wear it on even days, I'll wear it on odd days. Because we're in this together, remember?" Amara squeezed her hand. Together. They never learned what happened to Grandmother Ya. Her hut stood empty the next morning, as if she'd never existed at all. Some said she'd moved on to find other villages to corrupt. Others whispered that the dark spirits she'd served had finally collected their debt. Grandmother Ashanti lived another 3 years, long enough to see the twins grow into women who balanced each other beautifully. Zalika's natural charm tempered by Amara's thoughtful caution, Amara's quiet strength elevated by Zalika's generous spirit. Before she died, Grandmother Ashanti told them something important. The prophecy I saw when you were born came true, but not the way I feared. You did nearly destroy each other. But instead of letting that destruction complete itself, you transformed it into creation. You turned envy into understanding, shadow into light. Not by eliminating one for the other, but by weaving them together. What about the 2 moons in the well? Amara asked. You said one was bright and one was distorted. The old woman smiled. I was wrong about what that vision meant. I thought it showed one twin destroying the other. But now I understand. It showed 2 reflections learning to become one complete whole. You were never meant to be identical. You were meant to be complementary. Years later, Zalika married Kofi, and Amara married his brother, Jabari, who had been quietly in love with her since childhood but had been too shy to say so, while Amara's eyes were always on her sister's admirers. They lived in neighboring compounds, raised their children together, and worked side by side to make Nefertari prosper. The story of the twins who poisoned the well became a cautionary tale told throughout the region. But it was also a story of redemption, of the power of choosing love over envy, of the strength that comes from acknowledging both the light and shadow within ourselves. The village well still stands, its water pure and clear. But on certain nights, when the moon is full, 2 reflections appear on its surface, not competing for brightness, not one overshadowing the other, but perfectly balanced, creating a beauty that neither could achieve alone. And that, the storytellers say, is the truest magic of all.